Welcome to a new episode of the Ambitious Love Podcast. I'm your host, Julian, and in this show, I will interview people about their ambitions, their meaning in life, and just like what motivates them to be extraordinary. And today's guest is Julen Sánchez, a guy with big dreams reaching for the impossible out of a sense of good against climate change. Julen is a fellow student of psychology and has been the guy I was talking to about great ambitions and just generally deep talks. But this time, he's taking on one of the most difficult things a human being can do: going from Paris to Pittsburgh with just a rowing boat and a bike. He needs to cover more than 12,000 kilometers on his journey. A guy I casually met doing my studies is now attempting to cross the Atlantic in a rowing boat. So obviously I had to interview him and figure out his motivation behind all of this. But let's start with how we met.
The first half year at uni, we didn't really meet each other. I mean, we were like 400 people, so would have been sort of like a coincidence to meet. But I mean, ambitious as we were in the first year, still we chose this honors program. Where we met. A lot of psychology people in there. And the funny thing about it, I was thinking about it the other day, was that actually I think we got to know each other because both of us had this interest in coaching. And I mean, the honors program is an extracurricular study program, so there's people from like whatever, computer science, business, a lot of different subjects. And so the interests are pretty varied. It's not like in your study program where you can easily get along with all the people. You have a certain amount of topics to talk about. Interesting in the honors program was that we were the only two people that really went on to like the positive psychological approach in order not to fix the deficits, but in order to strengthen what you already have. So I think, we got paired up by coincidence, but ever since, I think, the conversations we had were some of the most interesting.
Oh my God,
the last years,
talked for hours a couple of times. Just like, let's meet for like 5 hours again and talk about random shit. That was good.
Yeah, especially, it usually started off like, man, I just need a break from like having, I don't know, to study for this and that and write this paper. Then in the end, it was usually like, I don't know, you lost sight of time. A lot of good memories, man. And also, I think we gave ourselves pretty good. How would you say it? Like inputs to develop our own mindsets, and so that was pretty much how we got to know each other, right? Like 3 years back in time.
Every time, I remember like super interesting how we both gave each other like visions of where we want to have, like those big ideas that we might want to do, and that was always super crazy about you, and kind of that came also like you have been traveling a lot also before and like afterwards still, and like what is maybe like a point where you sort of was in the beginning what you would say is the starting point of like the process that you are in at the moment? So like kind of you wanted to talk about the travels you did, right?
Yeah, well, that's obviously a big one. So I basically go back to when I left school to answer this. So I think we both remember the time, when life really started, when we got thrown out of this structured and given approach of how you have your daily life. So like school is, I don't know, there's not a lot of autonomy in choosing what you want. There's actually not a lot of time to really consider what you want to do, what you're going to do afterwards. So I really like to remind myself of that moment when I left school, what my dreams were, what my ambitions were, just my perspective on life, my mindset. And well, at that time, I think like a lot of people that left school, you have this big uncertainty, and you try to orient yourself on what others do. So I think a lot of the desires and the dreams, the ambitions that you have, is pretty much just what others want. So actually, one of the professors at the University of Twente, I'm still in touch with him quite a bit. So we sometimes meet and talk. And
who is it?
He was. I'm not going to mention any names here, but you know him.
Okay.
But yeah, one time he actually told me. He usually challenges me a bit, and he tried to challenge me in the way of saying that, hey, have you ever considered that your desires are probably not your desires? Because I think, like philosopher Girard or something, he proposed that like desires are usually borrowed from someone else. So things that others desire is usually what make them attractive to you as well. So you might want to consider which are your innate desires and which are the desires that you just soak up from your environment. And to be honest, going back to the school, leaving school, for me the desire, like for every 18-year-old, probably was, I don't know, to become independent fast, to be financially independent, to earn money, to be able to chase whatever you want to chase, if you want to call it like that. I don't know, like go out there, see the world, experience the most intense things, like whatever, parties, different cultures, just all the exciting things in life. But yeah, so lucky enough, one of the things that I desired was traveling. And for me, to be honest, in that time, it was really just one of those things on my list where I was thinking, hey, I want to do this, 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 and this, because as an 18-year-old, you want to have it all, right? There's not really something where you feel like you can have it all. And I say I was lucky enough to have travel on there, because travel really changed my perspective on that. So doing travel really changed the rest of that list. And I think obviously everyone that travels usually starts talking about this, how I changed before and after. But I think it's not that much about the traveling. It's really more about the first time you actually go out there and do something by yourself. You're fully reliant on yourself, and you actually spend time with yourself. You get to know yourself. And for me, the first time I traveled was actually with one of my best friends. And we went 3 months to the United States. And we did it together, and we actually had a blast. So we worked off a whole lot of these things on the to-do list. Like, seriously, one of the best times I've had while being on the road. But once I got back from that, I spent all the money I'd worked for 6 months before. I was still feeling like I didn't really grow up at all. I just extended the extent of, I don't know, enjoying life, partying, whatever. But I did not really grow. So that was the moment where I realized, as much fun as that was, I actually had to do this by myself. That was the moment I decided to pack my stuff, and I was lucky to find a flight, which took me 2 weeks later to Australia.
Oh, that wasn't that quickly after America. You just went to Australia.
No, it was not 2 weeks, but I was back for like 2.5 months, just earning little money. And then I found a flight, which was 2.5 weeks later. And that was pretty much the moment where I said to anyone, okay, right, guys, I think I'll have to leave again. And that's a pretty interesting moment, because a lot of people, a lot of people expect stuff from you. That's what we all have to deal with.
Yeah.
But people react very differently if you tell them, in 2 weeks' time, I'll be gone, and like, I don't know when I'll be back. I'll just have to do that right now. So that was the first time for me to where I could actually understand which people I wanted to have in my life, which I didn't want to have in my life, and also to deal with making a decision and having to deal with the consequences for other people. And that's a very difficult thing to do sometimes.
That's pretty bold, to be honest. Just like within like 2 weeks, I found this flight, I'm going to be off now, and don't like don't be interfered by the opinions of the others and like whatever another person says about that. And you seemed like super clear and determined with that decision. Like, where, as an 18-year-old, where does that come from? That you were so certain, I'm gonna do this now. I don't give a damn about whatever other people say now about this. I need to do this right now.
I think, honestly, I'm a bit lucky in the sense that I'm very stubborn, and not lucky in the sense that a lot of people like it. But if there's one quality to me that I mean, in some senses, I would like to change it, but it also contributed to a lot of good things that I've done. Is just this stubbornness. Like, if I have something in my mind, I can't really quit it, and I'm definitely a dreamer in the sense that I have a lot of great visions. Like, seriously, don't get me started. But I'm also a person that's very superstitious. So as soon as I have something in my mind that I want to do, I usually don't tell a lot of people until I have made this decision already. So then when I tell them, it's the decision made already, and then there's no way back. So I think if I say something, then I definitely do it as well. And that's sort of, I'm a very determined person, yes, but still it was very difficult to take that decision. So I think a lot of people don't really get is the process in between, where I sit there by myself and contemplate all the options. So then they see the end product of me saying, hey, I'm leaving in 2 weeks. It's all said and done. And it seems like I'm very certain, but certainly it was not that. I've been considering this and that, doing pro and con lists, and I don't know. In the end, it was an easy choice because I don't know. That was probably the first time I felt this need for adventure, and I responded to it because I think I've always had it. And earlier today, I've actually been thinking about what is adventure, because with the project I'm doing right now, I have to get asked that question quite sometimes. And in the end, I think my response to that is that adventure really is every exciting experience, which requires a bold move. And going to Australia was a bold move, especially because I had everything here. I don't know. I had a lot of friends. I had a girlfriend. I had my family here, which wanted to have me here. I had all opportunities after having my Abitur. I could have gone studying. I had a lot of support from all sides, but I didn't really feel I wanted to do that. So I think that was my first adventure, not because it was something massively extraordinary. And I think a lot of people go to Australia. It's not really what you would consider an adventure if you compare it to the big adventurers that, I don't know, climb Mount Everest or something. But I think adventure is for everyone something very different. So at that moment, because for me it was about learning something new, gaining new knowledge, exploring, and because for me it was exciting and a bold move. That's why it was an adventure. So I think traveling can be an adventure for sure. And my desire for adventure brought me to traveling, and I was lucky to find a $300 flight to Australia. So that's the other part of the story, I guess.
Okay, you already mentioned now a couple of times almost like the project you are doing right now, and I obviously am super curious about that. So why don't you start by saying what kind of bold move you have planned now?
Well, I guess it involves a lot of bold moves. I'll take you back in time a little bit, about 3 years. I think that was roughly the time we got to know each other. So you remember at that time, we were super busy. We were saying we were doing the extracurricular courses. We were just having a study, which seemed to have exams every 2 weeks. But you probably remember that, like, in that first year, I used every free weekend, free week, free vacation to travel somewhere. So that summer, I went to Mexico, Jamaica, and Cuba. And it was the first time, actually, I needed some more adventures, so I decided to travel not with my phone, so basically just old school. And
you did that travel already without your phone?
Yeah, that was the first time I did not take my phone with me. So I went to Mexico without a phone, and I have to say, you know, it was probably the best time backpacking I had, just because you meet so many people that realize, okay, we have to help this guy because he doesn't have GPS, he cannot text us on WhatsApp. So people actually go the extra mile for you. Because they go the extra mile for you, they actually feel more compelled to you. So I actually met the most amazing people during that trip, and something that also happened on that trip. It's pretty weird. It sounds a bit cheesy, I guess, the story, but it's actually true. So one day I was sitting at like a beautiful beach in Mexico. Dude, I mean, those beaches. But I was just sitting there, and like suddenly someone actually paddled out onto the water. It was a fisherman, and fishing route and everything. The only point was he was not having a boat, so he was floating in like a tire, like a tractor tire. So I was thinking, what? I mean, he had a little paddle and he had his fishing boot. I was thinking, what the hell? I mean, obviously people were sort of poor there, but man, it absolutely flashed me. Just like, I'm not from close to the ocean. I love the ocean though, but like I haven't had that much experience with like currents or just the winds, whatever, how the ocean treats you if you go out for so much. And I was just thinking, man, is this guy crazy? I mean, imagine just a current takes him and he gets out of the Gulf of Mexico into the Atlantic. I mean, what the fuck is going to happen to this guy? I mean, is he going to be able to survive? Or like, where is he going to come out? Is he going to end up in Antarctica? I mean, this guy, he probably came back to land. He probably did that a lot of times. But for me, it was just like something I never thought someone would do, just because it seemed sort of risky, like especially doing that by yourself. And I don't know. I went on to travel through Mexico and actually met a Danish guy in a backpacker's place, and we got along pretty well. And this guy, one night, he's telling me that he just finished a book about an adventurer from South Africa, and that this guy actually rode solo across the Atlantic Ocean. And man, I mean, you know me, but I was like, what?
Yeah.
I mean, I've been technically thinking about that 5 days ago and thinking if that's actually possible to do. And then this guy tells me, okay, it's possible. Not only is it possible, but someone's done it, and also by himself. So I was thinking, I mean, right, I have to read that book and I didn't think that was possible, and I wanted to hear the story of that guy. If that guy was just like, I don't know, I mean, some sort of alien or like a super athlete, I don't know. So I remember, getting that book, reading it, and one thing that really struck me was that one recurring theme in that book was actually that the guy was telling the whole time, hey, I'm just super average guy, I'm a super normal guy. I love biking, I love running, I'm quite adventurous, I love surfing, but I'm nothing you would consider an elite athlete. And still this guy did it. And I was thinking, come on, man, you're kidding. I mean, he's probably just very humble and didn't want to, say, hey, man, I took it alone against the Atlantic, whatever. So I started researching more and more. I dived into the world of ocean rowing pretty much. And it's actually like the world, it's like a society. There's quite a lot of people doing it. And I'll probably tell you a bit more about that later on. But yeah, one thing you realize from doing research about that it's like seriously average, normal people, but they all have one thing in common, and that's this ability to, well, it's a need for adventure, yes, but it's an ability to see something as big as a challenge and to draw energy from that. And at that moment, I reflected, and I probably have to think back to when I was still a little child playing FIFA all day. And I realized back in those days, honestly, that's probably what I thrive on. I thrive on challenges. So like, First time I realized that I was playing with a friend, just like video games, FIFA, and you can play against the computer or like artificial intelligence, whatever it is. And I mean, a lot of boys my age would do that, but what I like to do, if I did that, I always played at the highest possible difficulty level. Not because I was very good, but pretty much because, I don't know, I just needed it, and I lost every game pretty much. I would play a season of like, I don't know, 34 games, and maybe I had like 2 wins. The weird thing was, obviously it was not really fun if you see it from the perspective of winning or losing, but it's always what gave me energy. So every time I lost, I actually got more energy because I felt like, okay, I have to do better in order to get a draw. And then when I got a draw, I was like, man, maybe I can actually get a win. I mean, it was a very cheesy example, but like that was the first time I realized, okay, so this is what gives me energy. And I thought it was pretty much for everyone like that, but then I actually saw my friends.
So that's very interesting.
Yeah.
What do you think? Like, where did that come from? Like, why is that such an internal desire that you have? Is it also something that you, again, as you said at the beginning, that you learned, or that you like were put on? Like another person was doing that, or told you whenever you lose, you should get more energy, or do you think that's more like an intrinsic thing?
That's very good point, because I think we have very, very few intrinsic things. When you remember the time from our studies where we had to do those core quadrants, whatever, it was basically about, you had to think back and actually talk with your parents about the few qualities that you had as a child, as a baby, as a child, as a teenager, and now as an adult. And if it really comes down to what you always had, it's very few things. So a lot of things are actually learned. But if it comes to that, I have to say, I think it's innate for me. I don't know, like, maybe it's because I have like a little bit of perfectionist tendencies. So I really, I don't know, if I work on something, I really have high quality standards for it. And yeah, I really like the struggle in order to get better. So I think that was one of the things, but to me that was totally normal. So I was super surprised by being at my friend's place and playing FIFA, and actually seeing him play against the computer and realizing that if he lost, he would actually get super frustrated and put it down and have it one difficulty level lower. And that was his way of getting better. He obviously got better. He was probably better than I was. But the point was that my learning curve only started going up when I measured myself with with the most difficult. I don't know why that is, but it's something that's always helped me. So, for example, in my studies, I think there are always moments where you're swamped or where you actually feel like, okay, this is getting too much at the moment. How can I manage? How can I succeed? And for me, it always helps if there is a challenge and I feel like, okay, maybe this time I'm not gonna be able to succeed, then really remind myself of this perspective, of this mindset of, this is something you should not be able to achieve, but you can still try your best and see where you come out. For me, that's always been a big motivator. And
Okay, but when you now see your current challenge that you want to row across the Atlantic, you might die when you not achieve your challenge.
Yes.
Does that put something else on you? Just like before, when you didn't achieve this challenge or didn't master this challenge, you were like, okay, I try another time. But this could potentially mean you're dead.
Yes. Before answering that, I think I should try to finish up on what I said before. So, right. So I heard about this guy that did it as well, and that actually was sort of a normal guy. As more as I researched, I realized, hey, these are actually people that have one thing in common, right? As I said, so they like challenges and they grow from these challenges. And I think I've been observing that for like 1 year, but like without really having any specific thoughts in the back of my mind, until one day it started becoming clear to me that I've been thinking about that for 1 year now. It didn't really leave me alone. And I was sort of like, and I don't know if I want to do that. It's sort of risky. I'm not sure. I'm very young. I still have so many things ahead of me. I'm not sure I want to do that right now. But the fact that it was lingering so long in my head already told me, like, hey, okay, if this sticks around for a significant amount longer, you might have to do something about that. I was second year in uni though, so I was telling myself, hey, you're still having your semester abroad, you're still gonna write your bachelor thesis and everything. Just give it 1 year time, and well, if it still sticks around in 1 year, then you actually have the obligation to do something about it, just because it's something that really sticks with you, that you really want to do, apparently. That was basically how I get started with that. But then the point you just mentioned, this is a different sort of challenge. This is a challenge, potentially life-threatening challenge. It's probably the raw definition of what an adventure is. And yeah, to me, I have to say I have very big respect for this. I don't know, I've been researching or thinking about that for more than 3 years now. And I think that sort of process over 3 years, obviously, you get to know the challenge better and better and better. You understand all the aspects of it, or at least you hope so, because in the beginning, it's just like, I remember the first time I heard of it, I was just thinking, okay, so this guy out of his mind, how can he do that? He's probably going to die. Whatever, how can you risk your life that easily? Once you actually understand how everything works, how the specifics are, you understand, hey, this is actually, it's potentially life-threatening, but there are a lot of other things which are potentially life-threatening. And if you do it correctly, it is not something that you should pay for with your life, but it's certainly something that can happen. But for me, obviously, I think it helped a lot that I had to deal in the past with the question of the possibility of not living very long anymore. So last year, 2 years ago now, I was diagnosed with a cancer, and it was actually a malignant one. It came out of absolute nowhere. It was very weird because from all the World Health Organization books and everything, this is a sort of cancer that happens to people with an average age of 75 years. So it's not to be expected at all. I'm 24 years. I was 22 back in those days. And you really don't think about your health before something like that happens. But then from one day to the other, your life sort of shifts, and it seems like suddenly you have a limited time of life to live. And I don't want to go too much into the specifics, but one thing that you get out of that certainly is you get the responsibility to think about what death really means to you, how you're going to deal with death. And I think that's actually something where my mindset sort of helped me, because in that moment where I realized, hey, okay, this is not something that's happening on TV to, I don't know, some 60-year-old TV stars or whatever that you don't personally know, or like you hear about this person died of cancer, whatever, but then it suddenly happens to you personally. You're suddenly super grounded, and you understand what matters and what doesn't matter. And what I'm really grateful about is that it actually helped me to put a lot of things back into perspective. And so I think it's sort of related to my expedition right now, because I understood, honestly, I've always been living life in the way that I wanted to live it, but I understood just how fragile everything is for us. And it's really true. It's hard to remind ourselves every day, right? But I think if you really consider that death is, I don't know, maybe just one bike ride away, or one plane ride or car ride away. I mean, it's a possibility we have to face every day, and I think that's why the Atlantic Challenge for me. I don't know. I look at it more from a joy perspective. For me, this is exactly what I want to do. It's an incredible, exciting opportunity to experience what the Atlantic Ocean is like, the force, just the fact that 70% of our surface are covered by water. So I think, honestly, for me, as a person that loves to explore the Earth, how can you not explore 70% of it? You know what I mean? So, I mean, backpacking and everything is fun, but I felt in that moment that I actually wanted to do something meaningful, and the Atlantic row is something that's very personal for me. I love the idea of being alone out there by myself, which is something.
Oh yeah, that's a whole another challenge. Like, what was it, 130 days probably without anyone around?
Yeah, I'm hoping obviously to have it around 100, but you obviously have to calculate a little bit more. But I feel like a lot of people understand that. I understand the adventurous part of it. They understand that there's something to it. You know, being one of the first persons to do that. That's just like, yeah, that gives you that joy of exploring something new. But I feel like for a lot of persons, it would actually be devastating to be as long by themselves. And I think that's where it comes back to my illness. I've sort of been forced to sit there just by myself and to think about what life means to me, what I want out of life. And honestly, it's not a great situation to be in, but it's great that you're forced to be in that situation, because it does not leave you any other opportunity than finding an answer for what life and death mean for you. And for me, that answer certainly is that one without the other does not exist. So, like, if you live a life without the risk of death, then it's not really a life. And you have to admit it. I mean, even if you're sitting in your room the whole day, there's still a high risk that from not moving around, you're going to have a heart attack and die. I mean, you have to face it anyway, you know. And I think if you're a statistician, I mean, the odds are a bit higher if you're out on the Atlantic crossing it. But if you're doing it correctly, the odds are actually not very high. So I think it's probably even more dangerous to be contagious with the coronavirus at the moment or something like that, even statistically seen. So
so that's your escape from corona. You just go on the Atlantic for 100 days and wait until it's over. Is that your plan?
wouldn't be bad though, right? I mean, it's probably one of the only sports, if you call it like that you could do very well in those times. Yeah, no, but apart from that, I think the great point about the Atlantic Challenge is the following. I mean, you could also do, I mean, I'm also doing a bike trip before and after, but just imagine you set yourself a goal to bike around all of Africa, and it might take you 2 years, and it's a massive challenge. It's maybe even a bigger challenge than going across the Atlantic, but the point is, it's still different in the sense that if you start a bike ride, you can always also stop it. There's an escape line. There's something where you say, okay, right, so I injured my left knee. Right, it's probably time to get some rest for a week, and I don't know, then go back at it. The point with the Atlantic is you can only cross it if you have the courage to lose sight of the shore. And if you lose sight of the shore, that means you're in it. You're in this whole big thing covering 5,000 nautical miles. I mean, there's nothing really. You're going to be closer to some people in the space station than to other people on land. And yeah, the point is, once you're out there, you've really committed to something, and there's no way back. And that's what I like about it, because if you set out there, you don't know what you're getting yourself into. So
maybe like after like all the things that you're planning to do, what is kind of the motivation behind there? Why did you set yourself up to doing this challenge in the first place? You said you had an desire that you wanted to be adventurous, do something bold in this sense, but Like, why this challenge?
Well, yeah, that's pretty much the point. So once you're out there and you're living this, I don't know, simple but difficult life out there, you are out of your comfort zone. That's one thing. But the point is you cannot go back into it because you have committed to this. And I feel like, seriously, I think it's something that a lot of travelers experience. Once you start going places and you see all the beauty, the different cultures, you start losing a little bit of sense, sense of commitment in a sense, because it's quite easy to go here and there, fall in love with different places, cultures, people. But once you've seen what's out there, how many things are out there, it's very difficult to commit to one thing, especially once you're back. I think it's a pretty common phenomenon for travelers. Once they come back to their hometown, they experience this, oh my God, where am I? I don't know, like, how can someone ever live their whole lives in one house with one job? There's nothing wrong about that, but I think just the more you experience, the more difficult it gets afterwards to commit to one thing. And there was something I rediscovered during my illness, that as much as I love traveling, I'm still going to do it. It's still a great self-development tool. And quite frankly, it's just amazing for all the people you meet there. But for me, my challenge right now is commitment to something. And it's not natural for me to commit to such an expedition, which takes 2-3 years of preparation. Then it could take up to a year in the actual execution. I mean, depending on weather conditions, with a bicycling trip from Paris to Portugal, and crossing the Atlantic from Portugal to Florida, and then biking up through the Appalachians from Florida up to Pittsburgh. That's a commitment. And honestly, I mean, I have a lot of great ideas. I'd also be down to do a lot of different things at the moment, but this is something where I actually promised myself a lot from. And I'm going to tell you why. What brought me to this is, first, I've been thinking about that for a while. I've always considered myself adventurous, but you see those role models out there. I mean, everyone has different ones. If it's like professional football players, singers, I really like extreme athletes all the time. But then again, you know, you're sitting there at home and thinking, okay, right, so I'm a pretty sportive guy, but I'm not an extreme athlete, right? What is an extreme athlete? What makes it? Or even what makes an athlete, you know? Do you have to be a professional in sports to be an athlete, or do you just have to do a lot of sports back at home? If you go to the gym 5 times a week, does that mean you're an athlete? Probably not if you cannot really run 100 meters fast. I don't know. So it's a lot about those definitions, right? And for me, I don't know. I've been thinking about, okay, so I'm definitely not an extreme athlete or an extreme adventurer, but still, I love adventure, right? So I'm just gonna see what's out there for me, what I can actually do without, you know, having, say, 10 years of mountaineering experience, which I certainly do not have, so I wouldn't be able to climb Everest or something. But when I realized that ocean rowing is actually something you can get, I'm not going to say it's easy and fast to get in there, but it's certainly doable if you put in the effort. I mean, it has to be over 2 years, and I'm making a hell of a lot of sacrifices at the moment. I mean, just financial ones, physical ones, like training 2 times a day, 7 days a week, and just nutritional, just like, I'm working together with a nutritionist where, I've basically been eating like for 1 year clean and just like no cheat meals and hitting a certain threshold of calories each day. So at the moment, I'm struggling, man. I have to put on weight. So I'm like eating about 4,000 calories a day at the moment. Still going to be more soon. But when I realized how fascinating actually the setup of the whole expedition was, I realized, okay, this is something that's not only tailored to me because I love the adventure of being out on the ocean, of seeing whales and dolphins, of being in storms, of testing myself. I actually love the way of getting there. You know what I mean? And I think that was one of the most defining things I learned from me is certainly that, like, if you're not in love with the process, then you will never achieve the result. So it's very easy to love the result. Say, I don't know, you want to climb up on a mountain, and obviously that's an amazing view. You can take your sweet selfies for Instagram, whatever you want. But yeah, you have to consider that there's a way up this mountain, right? And like, if the only thing driving you up this mountain is taking that Instagram selfie, for some people that desire is strong enough. But if there's true hardship, like there's going to be on the Atlantic, that's not going to be enough. And I don't know. There's a lot of people that row the Atlantic at the moment, and one of the interesting things is that it's still possible to get quite a few world records there, because I think how many 92 people have rowed solo across the Atlantic until today. So like, when I'm going to do it, I'm going to be, for example, the youngest German to do it, the youngest Spanish to do it. I'm probably going to be the first one to do it from Europe to North America. But that's not the point, if you're in love with the result and you think, hey, I'm going to have a world record, it's going to be nice, I'm going to be out of my comfort zone, adventure. That's great, but you forget about the process, and the process of getting there is extremely long. So I think that was when I made the decision to actually take on this challenge, was when I actually, for the first time, understood, okay, this is what the process is going to look like. So you're going to be having to, I don't know, spend 4 or 5 hours a day just calling random companies and asking them for sponsorship, and embarrassing yourself a lot of times, and I don't know, just presenting your project to people which think, okay, this guy is out of his mind, this guy is nuts, right? And honestly, I was thinking, damn, the social media part, right? I'm not a person that enjoys social media at all. I'm like social media shy in a way.
Yeah.
But man, it's part of the process. If you don't have a good social media presence, then obviously there's not a lot of upside for sponsors to show them that you're having an audience. And once I realized that this was actually the process, part of the process, stuff that you never thought really about, like you think you're going to get a boat and you're going to row and you have to, I don't know, endure a lot of stuff. But that's really just part of the whole thing. So a lot of preparation is needed. And then there's also so much more than the rowing. There's so much mental hardship you go through there, especially by yourself. And I think when I understood that, I was first of all like, okay, whoa, I don't know, am I going to do that? But you can damn sure bet that like after 1 minute, I was like, okay, this is a challenge. And this is something that I'm going to struggle with. It's a lot of things that are not natural to me. I have no clue how to design a website. I've never built a website, but I had to do it myself, right?
Oh, you did it?
Yeah,
you did this website yourself?
I did it
pretty good.
Myself, yeah. Thanks. Yeah, it's still beginner side, but the point is you learn so much on the way, and that's what I realized, because a lot of these things I've never rowed before. So I first of all had to learn rowing. Then I realized, damn, okay, so when you're doing this, you're probably going to lose around 20 to 25 kilos. Back in those days, after last summer, I was at 70. I was coming from a summer of festivals, of having good times with my friends. So I was not really in shape. I knew I had it in me, but I was realizing, damn, there's a lot of work to be put in, but I actually think I'm in love with the process. I love, I don't know, being consistent every day with my calories, being consistent every day, doing my training, starting with the sponsoring, setting up the website, networking, getting to know the people that can give you recommendations, learning navigation skills, and it goes on and on. But like, when I realized that I'm actually, back in those days, I'm not very good at any of those things at the moment, that was actually the reason for me to start pursuing it, because I realized, okay, there's so much upside for me, so many things to learn, and that's what I'm experiencing at the moment. It's incredible. It goes beyond my expectations, and it's very difficult already. And the expedition hasn't started yet, but especially due to Corona. But that's another story. But yeah, it's crazy. I'm very excited of the opportunity to learn for sure.
But then now, when you like talk about all those things that are coming up, what are a couple of things that, apart from the process, that you enjoy that? But well, first off the question, then, did you have like situations in which you were like, oh fuck, that's maybe like a lot more than I actually wanted to do. Let's stop this project. And then the additional one is, what made you endure?
Well, it's a great question, because I think every one of us, if we're really honest, we all have those moments where we're like, ooh, damn. I mean, if you're putting yourself up against something like that, you cannot pretend that, nah, I'm always fine. It's just working. There's moments. For me, the biggest such moment was I was setting up my project in Portugal, and I was having my rowing club there. I mean, I was rowing a lot in Sevilla as well, but I finally was able to sort of get there, to have my social network there, being able to start from a sponsoring perspective, and then suddenly, well, I mean, it's an exceptional situation with the coronavirus, but from one day to the others, all the gyms closed. From one day to the other, you're not supposed to leave your house anymore. There's no more rowing. It's difficult to continue the training. How the hell are you going to find sponsors if all the companies are going almost bankrupt? So you're in a situation where you're like, okay, man, I'm not sure this is supposed to happen right now. But then again, I think that's what always got me along, right? So like, I'm a person, if I say I want to do something, then if I already say it out loud, then it's likely going to happen, because I'm really on it. So I understood that as another challenge, another bump in the road. But that's usually something I'm very grateful for. I've always seen life in terms of perspectives of opportunities. So I don't know. I mean, this situation right now is certainly a point where I was thinking, okay, right, it probably makes more sense to stop for the moment. It probably makes more sense to delay it for a year. And that's certainly not a bad consideration. I mean, it's quite possible that that actually happens if, the restrictions continue that way. And it's still an opportunity, but for me, it's no reason to stop what I'm doing right now, because I realize, I mean, okay, right, so it makes things harder. It also means there's more to learn, but it also means other things get easier. I mean, that's what a lot of people forget most of the time. I don't know. I mean, you probably consider that, but like in Corona times, there's never been more time to actually talk to people, right? Because everyone sort of, I mean, except you and me probably, but most people, they have a lot of time on their hands right now. A lot of people are actually having time to ask themselves those questions that I was faced with when I was having my illness, just thinking, what do I want to do in my life? What is the meaning of life for me? I don't know, what is death? How imminent is death? These are questions that are super important, but super frightening to ask. But I think if you spend so much time by yourself, you are bored, and you know what the human mind is capable of coming up with, right? You sometimes have those thoughts where you're like, where the hell are you coming from? And I think at the moment, actually, people are very mindful, and people are very receptive for new mindsets. And my project is not about me wanting to row the Atlantic. My project is actually about me wanting to contribute to reducing climate warming. And I think that there's never been a situation where people have been more receptive than right now, because right now we're in a crisis. For the first time, we actually see how it is if we cannot leave our house anymore. If daily life is just fully dismantled, if we have existential problems because we cannot work anymore. Believe me, this is something that's going to happen one day again with a climate crisis. I mean, it's maybe good that people realize right now, hey, it's likely going to happen, because we usually think, hey, okay, we're living in 2020, we have this system, I have my great job, everything is so stable. What we see at the moment, it's not really stable at all. So I don't know. I think even if, for example, sponsoring or something gets harder, one of the things that get easier is to send how do you say that, to prompt people to change their mindsets, because they're more receptive at the moment. They have more time on them. So I think I just take it from there. I'm just trying to see the opportunities in the situation, because let's not underestimate the difficulties, but the difficulties are usually what's broadcasted in the media, right? So we don't have, we're confronted with them anyway, so no point to think about them even more. There's quite a few upsides, and another upside for me certainly is to start a crowdfunding campaign instead of going full on sponsoring, because as I told you, people have time right now. I have time to actually motivate people to get excited about the project. And so that's pretty much how I go about challenges like this one.
It's awesome. I like this mindset that we really like, even though for you it could potentially mean that you're not able to do your whole challenge, and you're like, all right, what can I do else? Like, you go in there with the fundamental mindset of, if like basically one door closes, another one opens. Like, there's always an upside to other things. But
it's exactly that.
Yeah, that's quite an important thing that you mentioned right now. It's like, even in you build now, what is that, 2-3 years almost to that situation, and now like coronavirus comes in, it's like it could potentially like completely shut off everything, and you're like, oh wait, where's the other door I can just go through?
Now that's the beauty of life, captured by you in a few sentences, because and stuff happens that we cannot foresee. And I'm lucky, you're lucky, because for us, I chose this. It's not like I'm existentially threatened at the moment, but I chose my challenge. I chose this hardship. So if I have to delay it for a year, I'm not gonna be super happy and excited about it, but it's not terrible. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at the other hand, what you're saying, and that's one of the beauty of life, is like, if something like that happens, doors open that you could not foresee before. And it's not like you could not foresee them because you were blind or you were stupid. It's just, the situation changes, but we are very bad in realizing the consequences of that. So that's just innately human, I believe. And if something like that happens, like a big perspective changer, there are so many doors which we can open and go. I don't know. That's sort of what keeps me going if I fail, because I realize like every failure is a bit like this crisis at the moment. You get into a personal or a spiritual crisis, and you think, how am I going to get out of here? It's terrible. But then in the end, there are doors that open, and you never knew those doors existed. So, that's why I'm not really scared of failing at the moment, because I just realize, okay, if I fail at something, it's just gonna open up some other doors which I cannot foresee at the moment. I think
sounds beautiful.
It's beautiful, right? This is I have to credit this to one of those big ass psychology books that we have to read in our studies. But researchers did a study, and that's probably one of my two favorite studies from the psychological domain. And it was about regrets in life. And you probably know that.
Probably.
The point was that people do regret a few things, yes, but usually people only regret those things that they did not do, or those decisions that were not taken. So people are I think that's because people are very good at rationalizing stuff. For example, you have two decisions, and say you take the by far worst decision, seriously. You take the worst one, and 1 year later we catch up again, and I'm asking you, hey, how did it go for you? And you're like, yeah, man, I don't know, I'm not sure. It went pretty bad and whatever. But in the end, you make up something, where you think, okay, but this was necessary for me because, you know what I mean? So people are very good in rationalizing bad decisions, and that's the story of my life. I've been doing incredibly many stupid decisions. I've been doing a lot of things I'm not very proud of, but these are the things which put you in crisis mode, But afterwards you get out and you're like, okay, that's actually, I didn't know it then, but that's actually what I needed, like I needed to fall on my face in order to get ahead. And if you don't take decisions at all, that's usually what you regret. And for me, it's actually a big liberation, because when I realized, okay, I have a difficult decision to make, and the decision at the end of my bachelor was definitely, hey, I have this project, the Atlantic project. I had it for 2 years on my mind right now. And the question was, am I going to do something about it, or am I going to do my master's or go traveling again, something like that? And I think it really helped to consider that study, where I just realized, man, the things you're going to regret is like the things you're not doing. So if I'm doing this and if I'm failing, then in the end, I'm going to be telling, like in 5 years, I'm going to be telling this big story about, hey, remember when I did that? And you know what I mean? I really had to learn that the hard way. I really had to fail on it, because whatever, you know what I mean? So I think that sort of gives you a lot of courage. It gives you a lot of courage to start stuff which is way too big for you to do. And I don't know, this project that I'm doing, I mean, for a lot of people it seems incredible, or just like out of the ordinary, out of what they can imagine. But that's another beautiful thing. If you that's the key. If you're consistent and if you work on it every day, you can make it happen. And I think traveling was one of the initiators for me to change my values. So I think as an 18-year-old, having the same experience in Mexico, meeting the same guys would not have inspired me to do this, because it would not align with my values. Obviously, a bit character as well. So for me, I think my personality, which I am a very outgoing and adventurous person anyway, but for me, the value back in those days when I started, started to consider this could be something I really want to do, was that I was looking for some way to actually make a difference and contribute. So I don't know, I was reading books that time, and I think, it was maybe only then that I really understood the necessity to do something about climate warming, to not only protect people but also animals, and just this amazing planet in general. And I don't know, I realized, okay, so the first 20 years of my life have been pretty much neglecting that. I mean, I've always loved animals and nature. I've always had that, but I've never really been acting like that. And I think a lot of people are the same way, right? We love our dogs, we love our cats, we love going to the mountains, we love skiing, we love being outdoors. I mean, obviously we love it because that's where we come from, right? That's what we had for millions of years. But that's one thing, right? I don't know. So I think everyone has that innate for sure.
And maybe like when you said all the like desires that we borrow from other people, but like there are people who are then acting upon those. They're like, okay, this dude is super amazing. Would also align with my values, but I'm just not the person who does those things.
Exactly.
But like, what, for example, made it for you clear? Also, like, what are your values, and what do you think were like the most important bits that you think are important in order to figure out what is really for you?
Yeah, it's hard to say what's really for you, because you can always choose, right? You can always make decisions. And for me, realizing then that actually I really loved nature and being outdoors, protecting animals, but not doing anything about it is just a big hypocrisy, sort of. It's like a paradox, and that's sort of what I didn't like about it, because if you say one thing but do the other thing, it's you always it's very easy to criticize people, politicians or policymakers, whatever, for their hypocrisies, because they're saying one thing, doing the other. But if you start doing it yourself, you usually a bit more, you close your eyes a little bit more about it and you say like, yeah, but whatever, I had this and that reason for it. But I just felt like, okay, so I've been pretty critical to some people as well in my life, or like I'm critical of some of the decisions that I made. But then again, I don't have a right to be that critical if I don't act or if I act actually the same way. So for me, actually, the realization was that I hadn't really contributed a lot, but seeing how the development of like environmental activism, I'd say, is getting more and more mainstream. And that's actually great, but it took a long time, right? So like 20, 30 years ago, I guess, like even the political parties that were trying to protect nature, they were still seen as hippies. I mean, in our generation right now, it's getting more and more normal, right? I mean, I'm not an activist and I've never really been one, but I think that's sort of the point I wanted to transmit because, I realized that like, I don't have to be one, but I'm just an average person like you, just want to do something. And for me, if I do this anyway, that's my way to contribute. I'm not saying your way to contribute should be by rowing across the Pacific or, I don't know, climbing the Kilimanjaro. But I think
it kind of what was the process for you to figure that out? Because that's at least I also see that there's people are like a lot. What is like my direct thing? What is my desire? Where could I align? Because there's a lot of things that people are doing outside, and they're super convinced and convicted to do that, and I'm just like, yeah, like would be cool to do something, but I just don't know. Like, kind of what for that mindset? What steps did you take in order to figure that out? Figure that out for you?
Yeah, I think it's not easy because we also have this societal idea that everyone is unique, everyone is born for one purpose. You have to find your thing. I have to find my thing. I think that's what's putting a lot of pressure on everyone. I don't know, even if you grow up in like great conditions and you get all the help from your parents you need in order to become a lawyer. You always wanted to become a lawyer. I don't know. That's great because you have that from your childhood, and there's a few people that have that like that. But a lot of people that don't have that, they have that extra pressure because they feel like, everyone should be having something like that. Yeah. So I know a lot of people that are like, damn, I mean, I think that's not 100% the right thing for me. It started off great. I started my internship at this company, and the first half year was amazing. And I think I want to do this for the rest of my life. But after half a year, I realized, oh, damn, I'm not sure. Now I'm seeing the negative parts of it. I think that's what made sure for me that this is the right thing to do for me right now. Because it's not about the positive aspects of something that determine if it's something for you. It's the negative aspects. And like everything comes along with pros and cons. Everything comes along with problems and amazing upsides. So for me, obviously, and that's what happens. In the beginning, you see the upsides. So when I started taking on this project, I saw this opportunity to be so close to the ocean, to have such an incredible experience, to go out of my comfort zone, to learn extremely well about mental well-being, to learn how to actually mentally endure such a challenge in order to be a mental coach one day, because that's what I figured. Maybe I like to do that. But, thinking of a mental coach as well, I only see the upsides in the beginning. But then when you start to realize, and that's what I mean with loving the process. When I started realizing, man, the process involves a lot of things which I do not like, which I'm not very natural in. Damn, maybe, and that was a moment where I realized, okay, maybe ocean rowing is not what I was meant to do. But I'm going to tell you, that happens with everything in life. Even if there would be such a thing where you think this is what I'm meant to do, there's still going to be the problems. And I think you just have to go out there and search those problems that you really want to have in your life. And for me, honestly, you just have to find the problems that you can tolerate, and if it's the problems that are worse bad, you know what I mean, less bad. I mean, it's just like that. There's not the one thing, and I think we shouldn't put the pressure on us to think that, because if we do that, I mean, you know that the greatest things do not happen when you're put under a microscope and under pressure. It's usually when you have time to just flow freely and develop yourself.
I like that perspective. Very interesting.
Yeah.
To take the problems that are less bad instead of like really searching for your one thing.
Yeah, it doesn't sound very sexy, to be honest, but
no, but it's like I think an important part, like in the process of finding something for that for yourself, to see, okay, what are, not only just looking for, I want to be an architect because once you stand in front of this huge great building you feel proud or something, because also the other part is important to that.
If you consider that the climb is 99% of the time and the result is 1%, then you probably get a sense for why the climb is actually, I mean, if you don't love the climb, then you're just going to have 1% to enjoy it. And I mean, we're humans and we have to enjoy some stuff sometimes. So even though you won't like all the problems, but the people that actually, I don't know, the people that are the biggest bodybuilders in the world, it's not that they only love the result, but they actually love to live in the gym. You know what I mean? They love to go there every day and, I don't know, throw around 50 kilos. I don't know, man, but it's really like that. And for me, I understood the problems that I'm facing at the moment, man. And I'm telling you, it's not easy to manage such a project while you have to consider your eating schedule every day. Like, for example, when we finish this podcast, first thing I'm going to do is having to prepare food because I haven't been eating for 2 hours. But that's a problem. I chose. You know what I mean? And it's a problem I love. I mean, it's very difficult in a lot of social situations. You know, if I go out with my friends, I'm not drinking alcohol. If I get invited for dinner somewhere, I usually bring my own dinner. It's stuff that really changes your life. And a lot of people would say, "Oh man, that sucks." You know what I mean? It's great to put on 20 kilos, whatever. But I don't want to do that. You know what I mean? But a few things you have to sacrifice. And then in the end, the sacrifices are what make it worth in the end. Because then in retrospect, the times of sacrifice are the most beautiful ones.
Wow. Okay. I think we just let it here. No, we're all pretty far, I think more than an hour. So 2 last questions. And one of them is basically where you went really a lot into, okay, what are your perspectives on why you do this thing, what are your motivation, what makes you sort of almost a fit for that particular challenge, why is that thing something you desire, but what was a question that I didn't ask you wish I did?
What was a question you didn't ask? I would have liked to. I think, I would have liked to tell a little bit about what I would actually like to achieve with zero emission, or why I chose to call it zero emission in the first place.
And this is the time right now.
Yeah, this is the time right now. So, all right, zero emission with a W in the end. So from row and from zero. Honestly, I just thought it summarizes pretty well the expedition that I'm undertaking. It's a rowing expedition, but it's also without putting any emissions out there. So, I mean, first I'm gonna cycle from Paris all the way to Portugal. Then I'm gonna row without any motors, without any emissions. So I'm basically just gonna use the solar energy to power my batteries so I can actually navigate and stuff. But I'm just gonna make progress with the oars and with the wind. And then I'm going to bike again. So basically the whole way is without any emissions, and that's why I called the project that way. And what I really would like to achieve with it, and it's not quite as big as you might imagine, but I'd hope to show people that by dedicating ourselves to one thing, by being consistent and working on it, we can actually achieve things which seem incredible or even not possible to do. And I think ocean rowing is a very great example for that, because if you hear about it for the first time, it's just something where everyone says, no way, no, that's not possible, man. Is that even possible? And why are you going to do it? You know what I mean? It's the perfect example for how dedication and commitment can actually lead to something extraordinary. And I want to transport that to different domains. I mean, to every domain, you know, like people out there doing their thing. If they take that example and understand, you know, like, I mean, it's a good example because it's so big, and see like, hey, this is actually how incredible it can get just by making small commitments and working hard on it, then I'll be very happy to just inspire one or two persons hearing that.
That also answers the last question. What impact do you want to have? So awesome.
Perfect. Nice.
Wow, that's well, you certainly put some new perspective in how I see things.
Really?
So thanks a lot for that. Just like that's other great things to start of thinking. I, for example, wrote down the part of it's not the positive aspect that determines something for you, but it's the negative ones. So that I think was for me, at least personally, obviously, an interesting perspective. And well, I'm going to do anything that I can help you to support you in this mission, because it sounds really awesome.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. And I'm very happy you got inspired by that. I mean, it's just how I go about things. And yeah, thank you very much for the invitation, man.
Oh, yes, for sure. Anytime. I really love to that's kind of like sort of almost my perspective of thing that whenever I see an initiative or a person that really trying to figure out their own thing, trying to just be sort of almost brave and just doing their thing just to figure things out for themselves. That's sort of like when like my heart opens, like, oh, I want to see that, like, what is this person doing? What do they have in mind? Where do they get the energy and motivation from? And so that's like, I really, really enjoy that.
Nice, and that's a win-win situation, I guess.
It certainly is. Perfect, so yeah, now I guess if people want to support you in that, if people want to know more about that, where can they find you? And so, yeah, do that.
So if you want to understand more about the specifics of the expedition, about how it's actually possible to row across the Atlantic in a 7-meter rowing boat, because we talked a lot about the background, the motivation, but less about the practical stuff of how I actually going to do it, then the best place to go is my website. It's zeroemission.org with a hyphen in between zero and emission. But you can also follow the expedition on Facebook and Instagram at, well, Zero Emission on both platforms. I think the links are probably going to be in the description. Yeah, thanks very much, man.
Oh, man, I really, really enjoyed it. Cool. And cool, I hope that some people also get inspired or get a different, just for me, it's like really just a different perspective sometimes, and like just maybe over their current struggle, seeing that from a maybe wider perspective, or just maybe getting this tiny last bit of inspiration to really do their own thing, to get over what if other people say this or that. And so it's just awesome that you can say this mission or this perspective in with different words.
Yeah, man, let's see how it all goes, man. Maybe we'll have a chance to talk again when it's all done.
Awesome. Would be really cool to like have before, like all the struggles going through your head and then afterwards.
sweet, man. Maybe afterwards I'm gonna be like, hell, man, what did I even think of doing that?
What an amazing idea. This sounds so insane and at the same time admirable to hear about his ambitions. So please take a minute and check out his website and consider supporting him. Thank you so much, Julen, also for being on the show. And I hope, obviously, to see you again after you have been to Pittsburgh. One last thing. If you like this episode and want to hear more stories from inspiring and ambitious people, subscribe to the podcast and share it with a friend who might enjoy it too. Namaste.